Okay, we're recording.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. Today we are going to be talking about LGBTQIA plus youth and drugs, more specifically, how we can prevent them from getting into vices and substance abuse, but also how what LGBTQIA plus youth are facing today. I am a prevention educator. My name is Ruth Delpino, and thank you for being here with me today. We are going to start with why this presentation. I always start with this just because this is meant and targeted towards parents or people that are working with youth that I discuss for that particular topic. So this is not to scare you. This is to inform you. There are a lot of statistics, and this is something that is very real, and there will be a lot of numbers that may scare us in the long run, but it's something that will only educate us further to help the populations we are working with. This is not a parenting class. You are the best parent for your child. You know them best. You have been with them more since day one. You know them more than sometimes they will know themselves. And my perspective, my approach is shaped by my learning experience, which I will discuss next. I am a prevention educator. I am certified in life skills training, TEFL, teaching English as a foreign language, and I have a BA in global studies, American studies, and political science. I am 25, so sometimes when I do these parenting seminars, people assume that I may not have children, but I am teaching the content. I actually adopted two girls, my two nieces, at 19. They are ages 12 and 9. They are middle school and pre-adolescent. And every day is a work in progress, but it is something that's a gift and something that I didn't foresee happening, but I am glad happened because I get to be around two awesome children. So without further ado, we'll sort of get into the subject matter for today. We are talking about LGBTQIA plus youth. The plus stands for anyone that may not be physically represented in the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, questioning / queer, intersex, and asexual orientations. All orientations sort of fall in between sort of the mixture of what it is. So some people I do want to just address, gender and sexuality aren't always the same thing. And some people get confused by the concept saying, well, if you are this type of person, you should like this type of person. So the thing and beautiful thing about humans is that we are really flexible in the way that we view life and experiences and all of that. So I sort of explain it as, think of it like mismatched socks. They can be the same, they can match up, but sometimes gender expression and sexual identity do not coincide with the conventional terms we are used to. So someone who is transsexual male could like someone of the same gender or opposite. Someone who is cisgender of any sexual orientation exists. Transsexual or transsexual or gender fluid or any sexuality exists too. So a gender is how you express your sex, what you want to show the world around your gender. Transgender is someone who wants to change their sex, so male to female, female to male. Cisgender is someone born in their sex who does not feel the need to change. This is usually cisgender or part of the normal majority population in terms of what we consider part of the majority. Gender fluid, someone who does not identify with conventional standards of gender. Sometimes people who are gender fluid also identify as non-binary. But also those are terms for the person to define and for them to decide. So that is not necessarily something that anyone would impose on another person or a label without asking them first. And sexual orientation is your romantic preference. All of these gender and sexual identities cannot be chosen. It is intrinsic. Most middle school and high school students know how hard it is to be a part of the LGBTQIA plus population. No child would choose to be so out of what we consider, conventional. And I think that what we need to understand and what people need to grow with the idea is that children are just who they are. We express who we are intrinsic in what we learn. So people are just born with a preference, but more of a preference as it is more natural and intrinsic to them. and they should be celebrated for embracing who they are, as we all should be celebrated for embracing who we are. Down below on this PowerPoint, I have flags of the different gender and sexuality preferences and orientations. If you want to play a little game, figure out which one you think is which. But we will be moving on, but I will be sharing these slides for anyone that is interested in them. So what are normal kids facing today? Let's just get this out of the way first. We sort of discussed this last time: bullying, online gaming, social media, online gaming, including Fortnite, what's the other one? Roblox, and Discord. So social media such as TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and influencers who I discussed also a couple of presentations ago, how this person said they really like Dunkin' Donuts, and Dunkin' Donuts made a $2 million profit that day for influencing these people to go out and buy her particular order or drink. Normal kids are also facing economic disadvantages. Sometimes the economy does not accommodate their needs and their aspirations, and that can be something they are facing. And there's also social and political unrest. They are witnessing a resurgence of absolutism, meaning that you have to choose a side, and maybe are forced to choose sides, and they may witness something said about them, for them, or to them that could be disenfranchising, that could be traumatic, and things like that. So when people speak from places of social unrest, they may seem very hateful when they come across people of the opposite side. So that is something that normal kids are facing right now. What do LGBTQIA plus youth face? Misogyny, biphobia, homophobia, transphobia. So I'm going to break that down a little bit. Biphobia, for those that aren't familiar with this term, biphobia is basically being hateful towards people who are bisexual, but more specifically saying you need to choose a side. You need to oh, sorry, there's a chat. Someone in the chat? Oh, okay, all right, sorry. So you need to choose a side. You need to decide on what gender you want. And that isn't necessarily the way it works. And biphobia also comes with, are you greedy? Why are you so greedy? Why do you want to have so much when you could just choose a gender? Homophobia, most people know this term, but it is being phobic, or just really mostly uneducated or mean to people who are part of the gay community, saying that you're unnatural, you're not, this isn't natural. Why is your sexuality this way? Transphobia is being in particularly mean to transsexual and transgender people. So I do have some statistics here on higher use and preventing substances for from the Human Rights Commission. They always ask for donations, excuse me. So they sort of go through a lot of what LGBTQIA plus youth face, but more so what it kind of discusses too is that by 12th grade, more than 3/4 of US teens have tried alcohol. Nearly half have used marijuana, and this is just the general youth population. 21% have abused prescription medication, and that's just for youth in general. Now, what LGBTQIA people face may be very different. It may be something where they like, if the normal people, or the majority of people, sorry, I don't mean to use normal, but if the majority of people use those terms and use those vices, then I can't imagine what LGBTQIA plus youth face when they are sort of exploring their sexuality and understanding it in the way, and using vices as a way to get to that. So I also have a homelessness graph. This is actually from the AmericanProgress.org LGBTQIA plus rights commission. And it talks about youth populations among the homeless population. So homeless youth populations are in the United States are 5 to 10%. Are very little, but among those youth population, 5 to 10% are LGBT, And then of that homeless youth population, 20 to 40% are LGBTQIA plus. So that is obviously a very striking statistic considering many things, but this can be due to a lot of reasons. It can be intersectional problems, food insecurity, risk of rejection from family leading to homelessness, socioeconomic and racial disparity issues that don't necessarily, intrinsically mean that they are being kicked out because they are part of that community, but because they experience disparity in general. But most of the time it is because they are not accepted thoroughly. So I do have this up. We will also explore this webpage a little more. Now, an alarming number of gay and transgender youth are homeless, estimated 1.6 to 2.8 million. LGBTQIA plus youth that face homelessness each year is 320 to 400,000%. And this is for the New York statistic, but 14.4 is the average age that lesbian and gay youth in New York become homeless. 13.5 is the average age that transgender youth in New York become homeless. And that is a striking statistic itself. This will bring up a lot of serious statistics, but something that still needs to be discussed to further our understanding of this population. Homeless youth who have been sexually assaulted is 58% compared to 33%. Homeless youth who abuse alcohol is 42% compared to 27%. Gay and lesbian students who reported abuse at school due to their sexual orientation in 2007, 86 was verbal, 44 was physically harassed, and 22% was physically attacked. And there are a lot more statistics that sort of break down how especially LGBTQIA plus youth face systemically how they are able to enter a system and not be accounted for and not have the resources adjusted to. And that is something that needs to be addressed. Also, hate crimes are significantly, have sort of changed throughout the years. In 2019 specifically, hate crimes are slightly down from 20.8% to 18.6%. And this is among 100% of the hate crimes. So of that percentage, 20-ish% is slotted for LGBTQIA plus. And transgender hate crimes are up from 0.8% to 1.2%. So in general, it has gone down, but for transgender individuals, it has also gone up. So that is something to address. And so especially at-risk youth are trans youth. Transgender and transsexual youth have especially disturbing statistics. And there is one particular statistic done by the National Transgender Discrimination Survey report on health and healthcare. This was for 7,000 people who had 7,000 respondents to a 70-question survey. And this survey is pervasive, but it sheds a lot of light on the darker parts of our healthcare and social systems. Out of all the LGBTQIA youth, transsexual and transgender youths face the worst discrimination of any other group due to many risk factors. And it can be due to the reality that sometimes, not all the time, transsexual and transgender youth can decide and feel that they need to change their outer body to match their inner self. And they seek out medical attention, they seek out healthcare for these sorts of procedures. And they feel that they have to get some type of procedure to change who they are because they want to feel better about themselves. And so I'm going to go through some of these statistics and some of these subjective and self-reporting surveys. Over the quarter of the respondents of the 7,000 people that were questioned, a staggering 41% of respondents reported attempted suicide, compared to 1.6% of the general population, with unemployment, low income, and sexual and physical abuse being part of that equation. 28% of respondents were subjected to harassment in medical settings. This includes clinics, doctors' offices, hospitals, things like that. And 1 to 2% of transgender patients reported being assaulted in physicians' offices. 50% reported being the informant to their doctor on their specific transgender issues. So that just sort of displays the disparity and the disconnect between general healthcare and the needs of transgender and transsexual youth. There are a lot of medical barriers when receiving care outside of addiction services, and it is still staggering because of the needs that they have, and because it is so specific. They may have to go to specific doctors, but there may not be a doctor in their area that can help them with those needs. And also, transgender students are 2.5 times more likely than non-transgender students to use, and not just substances in general, but to use cocaine and methamphetamines in their lifetime, and twice as likely to report the misuse of prescription pain medication. And sometimes procedures to help them with their transition could be a part of that pain medication as well. But in general, because of the severity of how they may feel about themselves, this is a staggering statistic. And I do have all the resources at the end of this presentation for anyone that is curious about those as well. And so I do want to sort of reiterate that LGBTQIA plus youth are different than they were a few generations ago. And here's why. They are actually, Generation Z especially, are more LGBTQIA plus than they've ever been before. 2/3 identify as heterosexual, but that means about 33% of Generation Z is non-heterosexual or not heterosexual. So does that mean that they're seeing fads or, sort of giving into the fashion? Not necessarily. It just means that they are more comfortable with their sexuality and their gender identity. And while things are changing and there is more accessibility, today's LGBTQIA plus youth is 2 to 4 times more likely to struggle with substance abuse. And that is just something that has been a trend throughout many times. And I have the government website for that as well. And underneath I have pictures of politically engaged youth. And I just find it really interesting because LGBTQIA plus youth are so politically engaged. And we will talk about that a little bit more. So LGBTQIA plus youth are so much more at risk because of the social stigma. They struggle with the idea of their own identities, but also what is correct, what is right. They are out, they are proud, they can have what they want, they can have access to the healthcare they need. But sometimes the social stigma of wanting to act a certain way or wanting to be a certain way may just be more on their minds than just a heterosexual youth in general. There are also a lot of politically engaged LGBTQIA plus youth because there can be policies that take away their rights. There can be policies that sort of give them pressure to understand their own identities so that they can see and understand what is good for them, what they can vote for, what they can decide is best for their communities. And their organizations sometimes, when they address homelessness, they are not necessarily specialized in the needs of LGBTQIA plus youth. And generations prior made spaces for socializing. And that is sort of something that is pervasive throughout the generations. When you're gay, you go to a gay bar. That's sort of the socialization that had happened in the previous generations. And that's great for people to meet other people, but that also means that alcohol is present, that other drugs and substances may have opportunities to present themselves. And because you want to fit in, because you want to say yes, because you want to be part of this kind of community, you would say yes, or you have more likelihood of saying yes to drinking alcohol, sniffing cocaine, things like that. So the avenues for acceptance are pervasively around risky socialization. And historically, many people who have gone to gay bars have engaged in relationships and physical intimacy very quickly because there was no time to get to know one another, because there weren't a lot of spaces for them to be themselves. There was no way to mitigate any of that process. So that's one thing. But today's youth also face social media, where youth connects to other people like them online, but because they want to be accepted, because they want to be known, they may enter relationships and friendships that aren't always good for them, that may not be the best route for them to take for their future, because they just want people around. They just want people to connect with. And I think that is something that we can all sort of agree on, that youth just want to be accepted, and LGBTQIA plus youth are no different than that. Does anybody have any questions so far? Or anybody want to put anything in the chat? I don't think so, but we'll move when we move. Okay, we're good? All right. So I do have 2 videos. I do think that anybody that is an educator that wants to use or is specializing in LGBTQIA plus youth, then we can sort of go from there. But I will be showing this one in full. I believe it's 2 minutes, and it does show a lot of substance use in the LGBTQIA plus community. So we'll go from there. There we go.
What does LGBT means? The specific acronym stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. Many LGBT youth are suffering from self-esteem and identity issues. Youths are at an age at which everything is changing, their brains are developing, they are maturing and questioning their sexual identity. LGBT youths experiences violence that includes bullying, teasing, harassment, physical assault, and suicide-related behavior. They often experience emotional challenges such as rejection and isolation surrounding the process of coming out, fears of physical violence, prejudice and discrimination. The lack of social acceptance that LGBT youth experience can lead to a dangerous behavior to which they found comfort on alcohol, marijuana and other illicit drugs including cocaine. According to data from Youth Risk Behavior Surveys or YRBS, conducted during 2001 to 2009 in 7 states and 6 large urban school districts, 12% to 28% of LGBT youths were threatened or injured by other youths in the prior years. 200% of LGBT youths are more likely to use illicit drugs than heterosexual youths. All youth, whether heterosexual or LGBT, deserves to be given support, acceptance, and effective drug use prevention education. The fight against LGBT substance abuse will be a difficult challenge, but with the help of their family, friends, and the society, there is still a chance. When LGBT youth feel safe and supported, sometimes for the first time in their lives, they can make significant strides during their treatment. What would happen if society stops rejections to LGBT? Prevent them from taking comfort on drugs.
So that is just, I like it because it sort of talks about the use of LGBTQIA plus youth, but also the ideas surrounding around the recovery and the prevention of these substance abuse disorders. And I really like that process to sort of look at it and be like, how can we change things? This is a problem, but how can we offer solutions to such problems? And also I don't know if anyone here knows the term logo or knows the channel logo, but logo is sort of based around LGBTQIA plus sources, videos, movies, the L word, if anyone's ever heard of that, comes from logo. And it's a space where it was a channel created to sort of address LGBTQIA plus issues, but just in general, fun things where they can have a community together on this particular medium. So we'll be going to that. And it is based around people who are in logo the actors and actresses that are in logo. So I find that interesting. There's always ads. Okay. So we will be, excuse me. Okay. And here we go.
So I've been struggling with a substance abuse problem
Everyone hear it okay?
maybe since I was 16.
Like when I was 19, since I was 18 years old.
And I remember being 15 years old and thinking like, this is gonna be a problem.
My drug of choice was crystal meth, and I got into it because of an ex-boyfriend of mine.
My drug of choice was drinking and Coke.
You were a wino.
From alcohol to marijuana to cocaine to crystal meth and like lots of party drugs.
I don't imagine you being into depressants.
Oh.
I picture you like up and happy and smiling and like yapping away and prancing about.
Cleaning the house.
Cleaning.
On meth. Spotless.
My sexuality didn't really play a role in my substance abuse. I drank because I was depressed. I drank because I didn't feel great about myself.
My sexuality did play a role in my substance abuse problem.
I internalized a lot of shame about being gay growing up, and I felt like I didn't belong, and I felt like if I drank and used drugs, that I could push all that down and not have to feel that.
For the first time in my life, I was like one of the cool kids, you know? I wanted to keep doing it because this is the one time in my life I felt like I could be here whenever I felt like I was here.
I needed to drink in order to like go through my day.
What we're all looking for is just, how do I cope with this? How do I manage this?
A way to escape.
Yeah.
You literally feel empty. You hide every single part of who you are just to not feel, to get through the day without having to feel any emotion at all.
I would describe addiction as an attempt to manage uncomfortable feelings.
It is a very serious disease that a lot of people die from.
Having a substance or having an act that takes over your life,
You feel kind of incomplete without it.
you lose a piece of yourself, and that piece is like what I call your humanity side.
The first time I found out you had a substance abuse problem was when your ex was prepping me on meeting you.
When you're peeing your pants on a red carpet, things are not going well in your life.
Right.
I was literally pushing everyone away from me, and then at the same time trying to pull everyone at me and ask for help.
Right.
You know, it was like such a paradox.
I would describe addiction in the LGBT community as pervasive. Something that's prominent.
A reflection of how much hurt there is in the community.
When you go out, you're gay, you go to a bar.
Our entire culture is based around drinking.
Proportionally, like we're so statistically more likely to be using.
Your addiction affected our relationship by...
So, obviously, I think that there are some things there that are very important to address, especially because when people are talking about addiction in their communities, they see it. They are part of it. They know. And I think that this shows that these people, they are older, but if they had an intervention in their youth, it could have possibly been better for them to understand how to be different, how to reach rather than to take for their own grief. So I just thought that was very interesting, and that these are people who are out on the other side, but they do see a lot of the community's pervasiveness of drug use and things like that. And they also said that a lot of LGBTQIA culture is around drinking and having fun. And it's mostly because of a lot of the hurt and the lack of hyper self-awareness that they have growing up. So I do want to talk about youth and what makes them unique to this specific generation. One, they live as part of a disenfranchised population. That's just what it is. But also, they are coming out earlier and earlier due to representation in the media and access to information. Some people and some youth come out as early as 7 years old. And I think that speaks to the testament of them knowing themselves, but also being given words and tools to understand what their sexuality means. They are not as isolated. They do have access to media and phones. And if you have a phone, you have basically the world. And this particular newspaper article talks about Generation Z being the most politically active generation, and among their peers, LGBTQIA plus youth of that are roughly twice as likely to engage in policymaking and are more politically engaged. There is a push for them to know about their communities, to demand more, and they are roughly twice as likely to engage in policymaking. If they are future policymakers, they have to know kindness and goodness to know what is good. And I think that that's something that's really important, that people who make policies and people who are in charge of the future must know what kindness and goodness looks like in order for them to make good, well-rounded policies that address all the issues presented to them. And I think that LGBTQIA plus youth are really finding a lot of that in their own sort of way. Any questions? I don't think we have questions, but I just want to make sure. I think we're good. Okay. So how do we change the cycle? And I know that a lot of people are sort of talking about this. There's drug use, there's suicide ideation, there's so many things that are centered around the realities of LGBTQIA plus youth, and acceptance is really just part of that equation. Youth in general exist more properly and have more proper upbringings if they are accepted by their communities. And also social programs. So if we accept our children holistically, it becomes easier for them to cope with their realities. Social programs exist to serve all communities, but if you are a part of a prevention agency, it is best to be well-informed, trauma-informed, and informed in a way that better benefits the communities you're working with. And if it is LGBTQIA+, then taking the research and applying it to your teachings is extremely important. And social programs also should exist with empirical and self-reporting data that suggest the shortcomings of the policies around them. Accessibility to prevention programs is what I just mentioned. Harm reduction strategies, meaning more so housing first initiatives that are LGBTQIA plus informed. The needle exchange that sort of addresses LGBTQIA issues as well, not just exchanging clean needles, but also maybe handing out pamphlets along with that so they can understand their sexuality or get services to help them understand their own substance use disorders. Being with LGBTQIA youth celebrations, maybe going with your son or daughter or however they identify to a pride parade, or to sort of think of them in a different way. For example, if they identify as gay, getting a shirt that says, "I'm a proud mom of my boy," or something, and it has, all these wonderful sort of logos that scream pride, but also maybe the small stuff too, just making sure. Oh, in the chat, sorry. Sorry, Jocelyn. Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. I will read that as well. So being with them to celebrate LGBTQIA plus celebrations, therapy, possibly for better coping skills, for them to understand their own sexuality, but also if they say, "I'm stressed out, I want to go for a drink because that's what my ex-boyfriend would do," or "I want to go for a drink because that's what people in my community do," to understand that there's more to that, to understand that the intervention could just stop there. If the therapy exists around other things and their sexuality isn't inherently a part of that, they still need to have that addressed. One, just because it should be addressed, but two, the LGBTQIA plus community does have more pervasive alcohol and substance abuse disorders in it. So if it's not a problem now, it may be a problem later. So here we go. So also we need to come up with policies that protect youth, policies that make sure that youth become who they are. and that these policies exist around them for them to grow in a space where sexuality shouldn't inherently be part of their struggles, right? And labels are important to most youth, but each label needs to be treated with equitable care. And I mean this by saying, when you say preference, it's only used because a lot of people use it that way. And I use that language because that's how people use it. But preference is something that's intrinsic. It's not something that is, it's natural. It's something from within. It's not something that is told to them. It's not something that changes their brain. It's just something that is who they are, and that's it. But also labels being treated with equitable care, meaning that we label sexualities only to the people that want to label them. So for example, I know people that come out as queer because they don't know how else to identify, and that's okay. We don't have to push them to define that. There are people that may come out as one thing and adjust later, but also for transsexual and transgender individuals, using their correct pronouns. If they prefer the term he, she, they, them, whatever it is, using those and just adjusting that slight language verifies and validates who they feel on the inside so that they can more readily face the world when they have to go into the outside world. And I believe that when you have children that come out to you or children that sort of talk about these things, sort of addressing, saying that you should be absolutely accepting when they come out to you, and if you're not comfortable with that, finding a person that they can talk to and be readily available for them. But also saying you're too young to know what you want is not good. You've never been with XYZ, are you sure? Asking those kinds of questions they don't help them. They're not moving forward in this sort of direction. I mean, it's okay not to understand everything. It's okay to be uncomfortable and confused, but the moment you make them feel unwanted, children remember that. And I believe I touched base with my last presentation when I said children become what they are told. And it is no different when LGBTQIA plus children come out to you. If you say you're weird or different or not okay, they start to feel that. So, and sorry, Dustin, I didn't read fully what you had said. And it says here, certain language can be stigmatized, clarify. Oh, I'm so glad you clarified after you were using the word normal and how this adds to the stigma and feelings of isolation and alienation and how we should avoid referring to people that way because of what alternative implies. Lastly, when talking about language, sexual orientation, and gender identity are certainly not preferences and are very much a part of who someone is and how they were born. How people choose to express their gender and sexual identity is certainly a choice that they have full autonomy over defining. It is our job to accept people for who they are. Thank you, Jocelyn. Yes, and thank you for reiterating my points. I really do appreciate that. And I do just sort of want to continue on just in case we have any other holes in the logic or any questions that may be pervasive for this. Places that are typically seen as, sorry, one more time, I'll check the chat. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Jocelyn. Places that are typically seen as deterrents could possibly become places of acceptance and embracement. That comes with places of worship, school, sports teams, extracurricular activities. And really that is just centered around the way that people respond to them in those spaces. Places of worship could mean you are also a child of God, or you are also welcomed in this mosque based around XYZ. And even though, sometimes it may seem like we don't want you here, here is a place that you are safe to worship in your own way and feeling that your sexual orientation and your sexual identity and gender identity is safe with us. School, just making sure that as an educator, you are more readily making sure these policies exist. Sports teams, I believe that sports teams are built on unity and that in itself can reaffirm them being part of something. And extracurricular activities in general, maybe being something a part of specialized, such as GLAD or, the LGBTQIA plus club or something like that, the Gay Straight Alliance as well. And supporting business and policies that help include rather than exclude. So local businesses that give portions away to nonprofits and ethical for-profit businesses. This obviously doesn't cover a huge range, but Urban Outfitters, Boy Scouts of America, Chick-fil-A, Cracker Barrel have all had sketchy past with their LGBTQIA plus employees. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't use your buying power to get what you want or to do those sorts of things, but to also just second guess and make sure that if you fully support LGBTQIA plus individuals, then you are also able to look at businesses in the same way and scrutinize what isn't necessarily something seen as ethical or something that may be just sort of, wavering on the way of their disenfranchisement of LGBTQIA plus individuals, and to just hold yourself and others more accountable when discriminatory actions or language are used. And that is it for today. Oh, and I also have a quote, just because I thought it was something that was really, really important to reiterate. One day we won't have to come out of the closet. We'll just say we are in love, and that will be all that matters. And I think that's really what any LGBTQIA plus youth and individual looks towards, to just be accepted based around the fact that they are loved and they are accepted holistically and fully in every way possible. And so I just want to close with that. Thank you so much for being here. I don't know if anybody else has any questions. I don't think there's anyone in the chat for that. So I will stop share now and we can stop recording.